Good evening, everybody. 7 o'clock. I call this meeting at the Prosper Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. Didn't ask anybody to lead the invocation, but Mays, would you?
Sure. Father, we are just so thankful this evening for the many blessings that you've given this district. We thank you so much for the students and the families that we get the honor and the entrustment to taking care of and educating and growing up. And Father, we just are so thankful for those teachers. We pray for patience and wisdom, direction, Lord, as they teach these students the things that they need to know. And Father, just that they would be role models for these kids. Lord, we are so thankful for the financial resources that you've given this district and all the opportunities that we have for our students to be involved in sports and drama and band and all of those things, that we get the opportunity through the financial resources of this district. Lord, we just pray for wisdom and direction this evening as we make decisions for this district. In your son's name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Mays. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Nope. Okay. We're going to jump right to the meeting. Last time at the meeting, we really went fast, and Ms. Thompson reminded me that we were really going fast. So we're going to take it slower today. I do think it's worth pointing out to those of you that come to these meetings that we do get a board packet. Our administration provides a very detailed board packet. What is it, 2 weeks in advance, 10 days, 2 weeks? So we have plenty of time to digest these materials and talk about them. We'll look at some things on the financial subcommittee, on the bond issue today that we went through our financial subcommittee. So although it appears that we're zipping along at a really fast pace, we have had a chance to digest some of the materials. So, but that being said, we'll see what the dialogue is tonight. We'll start with the consent agenda.
Got the minutes from the last meeting. That number's now 16,808.
It was 3,000 more, did you say?
100. 300
more.
Over 300, well, now over 400 since the start of school.
Right.
And then you can see the various projects under construction. I'm still trying to find out.
Did you look into that?
Yeah, I'm trying to. Middle School 4, which is Rushing Middle School, all fish trap. Rock Hill High School. All these are scheduled to open in August of 2020. And let's see here, do I have, yeah, I need to get, is it Joe or Josh? Joe, come up and give a preliminary schematic for High School 3.
Already.
Oh,
Already.
gosh.
Good evening. I'll try to go slow. What we're going to share with you this evening is the progress for High School number 3 that we've made thus far through programming and schematic design phases. I'd like to thank Dr. Bradley and his staff for the work that they've done to help us on the project thus far. So we're going to talk about the site plan, the floor plan, and some perspective views of what the campus is going to look like. We've already completed the programming and and schematic design phases for the project. One thing that I want to mention before I get into the slides is that the program for High School number 3 matches the program used for Rock Hill High School. There's a few minor changes to the CTE programs, but those were directed by the administration. So Nothing really major. We just kind of reworked some different areas in CTE. So in terms of the site plan, the campus is located on the south side of First Street, east of Coit Road, and west of North Custer Road. Resulting from the site analysis, the main building will be located centered along a north-south axis aligned with Granite Shoal Drive, which is the southwest entry into Whitley Place. There's multiple drive lanes into the site established along First Street, including a new collector street along the east boundary of the site. The main parking and student drop-off will be organized on the north, west, and east sides of the main building, with additional athletic parking and bus drop-off along the south side of the main building. The main entry to the building is centered on the north side, the auditorium entry on the east side, the arena entry on the west side, and the cafeteria entry and bus drop-off on the south side. The band practice fields is on the east side, adjacent to the Fine Arts wing of the main building. The multi-purpose building and athletic fields are on the west sides, adjacent to the athletic wing of the main building. One thing to mention about the site, the high point of the site runs along First Street, parallel along First Street, and there's about 45 feet of drop down to the south side. So that's kind of why you see the way we've set the building up on the highest point of the site, front and center along First Street, and then pulled all the athletic areas along the south side. Pretty similar to what we did with the design of Rock Hill. It's got about the same amount of fall as Rock Hill does, so that gives you some perspective as far as how the building's gonna look along First Street. It'll set up pretty much the same. On the floor plan of the main building, the plan is divided along the Main Street corridor running east and west. You can see that Main Street corridor, pretty similar to PHS and Rock Hill, with the main corridor along the middle of the building. You'll have the core academic classrooms, administration, and library portions of the student commons located on the north side of the main corridor. In those areas, we incorporated a portion of the CTE classrooms in an effort to put them on display and encourage more student interaction with those areas. And that's very similar to what we did with the design of Rock Hill. In fact, those areas are almost identical to what was designed for Rock Hill. The south side of the main corridor will include the cafeteria portion of the student commons, which is that center axis there where you have the library commons at the top, and then the cafeteria commons on the other side of the main corridor towards the bottom. On the south side of the main corridor, again, is the cafeteria. The athletics will be located on the west side of the building, with fine arts, engineering, ag, and construction sciences along the east side. And that's that construction and ag sciences, that's that big purple area that you see on the southwest side of the building.
Southwest. What? Oh, I can't draw on it.
On the second floor of the main building,
Ignore me.
the second floor of the main building repeats the balance of the core academic classrooms, the administration, and library portion of the student commons, including CTE classrooms located on the north side of the main corridor. You can see that there. You've got the science wing on the right-hand side, and the rest of the academic classrooms on the left there. The multi-purpose building doesn't change from the design of Rock Hill. It will include the indoor practice field, weight room, training room, locker rooms, coaches' offices, and storage. It's pretty much identical to what we have at Rock Hill. is a view of the exterior of the building. The architecture of the building is in line with the established styles used for PHS and Rock Hill. At high school number 3, the design of the building is a traditional style utilizing classical elements. These classical elements are reinforced with a vocabulary of columns and arches accented by a classical frieze and pediment signifying the main entrances to the building. A light-colored blended brick anchored with cast stone makes up a majority of the exterior materials, and we've incorporated a terracotta-style roof and terracotta color rain screens to help create some hierarchy along the building, as you'll see. So this is your image of the main entrance. This is kind of what it will look parallel to First Street. This is just a closer shot showing some of the detailing along that main entry. So you've got this main entry element that sticks out, very similar to Prosper High School, where we've got that covered area as you enter into the main building. This is just the extension of that elevation coming along towards the, I think that's the east side of the building. Very similar to Rock Hill. That kind of details is very similar. We're just kind of utilizing a different material palette to do that, but it's pretty much the same. This is a little bit of a change from what we have at Rock Hill. This is the entry into the arena, and what you see to the right of that is the multi-purpose building. And what we've been able to do with the way this site sort of laid out is to pull that multi-purpose building in line with the main building. And that has allowed us to create this sort of plaza area between the buildings for pedestrian access from building to building. And in working with the town of Prosper, we feel like we can accomplish this without having a fire lane go through like you see at Prosper High School. So this has sort of been a big deal for us. We tried to do some things a little different at Rock Hill, but we were really able to pull it off here in a much better way, and it had to do with the site more than anything. So I really like the way this area sets up. I think it's going to be really great for the students. This is a view of the front of the multi-purpose building, and as it sets up on access to the football field track. This is the exterior portion of the building directly behind the cafeteria. So we've got this colonnade that comes out towards the bus parking area. Little similar to Prosper High School. This one is a little deeper because of the way the building is developed. It sort of came in on itself a little bit. So we've got this very strong axis from the main entry through the commons, through the cafeteria, and out this exterior area into the bus canopy. So this actually turned out pretty nice, I think. It's going to be a great area for the students to use. This is the entry to the auditorium. It's pretty similar in style as the rest of the building. We definitely wanted to signify that it's a main entry, and so that's why you see the columns and the arches and the way. Obviously, we've got to come up in elevation to slope down in the auditorium, so that's why you see this entry elevated the way it is. So this is a view of the main commons, the library portion, as you walk through the main vestibule. A little different than what you're familiar with at Prosper High School, where you walk through the vestibule and then you kind of continue down this corridor and the library's to the right. In this particular design, you walk into the building through a vestibule right into this open commons area, very similar to Rock Hill, the way Rock Hill will be designed. So this is what you'll see when you walk directly into the building. This is straight on as you come through that vestibule. This is really nice the way it's turned out. We've got these collaboration areas that sort of cantilever out into the space. At Rock Hill, we were able to put some of these areas down on the lower level. But we've pulled all that up on the second floor on this campus, and allowed more room for the library portion of this area here. And this is just as you continue back. This is the vertical circulation onto the bridge that takes you down the main corridor. This is a view from what Dr. Bradley likes to call the panopticon.
The what?
He calls it the panopticon.
Panopticon, of course.
It's a term he learned on his European trip. Is that right? So he wanted us to incorporate it into some of the designs here in Prosper. But so this is really it's a good place in the building because it allows you to see the whole campus pretty much down the main corridor and both this is looking the other way of the commons. It's the cafeteria portion of the commons. You can see we've got larger collaboration rooms that continue on the other side of that walkway and that overhang into the library. I mean the cafeteria. You can see them right there as well. This is a view down the main corridor. Pretty much the same as what you've seen at Rock Hill, just a little different use of materials. The skylight design has changed a little bit in this design. It's not so much at an angle. It's just more of a simple skylight feature. And this is as you continue down the corridor. It's a view from the second level.
I like the maroon, right? Take
It's
the
not maroon.
Yeah, you know it is.
It's not maroon.
It's red.
It's not maroon.
It's red.
Grasping at straws.
It's a placeholder color.
It's not purple.
Burgundy.
It's not purple.
It's not purple.
No.
It's not purple.
Yeah.
This is an entry of the arena. We've got an accented red wall as you enter in. We try to incorporate some slatted ceiling with some exposed structure to kind of give more of an athletic feel to this side of the building as you walk in. And then this is the entry into the auditorium. It's the auditorium lobby here. One thing that we were able to do with the design of this building is we pulled the ticket booths, as you can see here, and there we pulled the ticket booths inside the building. So you actually come into the lobby and you'll purchase your tickets from the lobby and then go in. That's it. That's the design update.
Beautiful.
Gorgeous.
Oh.
Gorgeous. I know a lot of time has gone into getting it this far. So we'll likely be able to build it. Whether we can staff it or not is another question, right,
You
Doctor?
get all kinds of questions. It's just staffing building.
Staffing building. Thank you.
It's very nice.
We'll slide into Mr. Austrin for the fine arts report.
Dr. Watkins, Mr. Bridges, School Board, it's an honor to be in front of you as Prosper's first Fine Arts Director. I would like to point out that I brought a visual aid that has nothing to do with tonight's presentation, and I'm not asking for money. This would be a first. This would be a first. This is the prototype for the Rock Hill uniform. We're going to make a couple small changes, namely with the RH, the orientation of the R and the H. And the P, we're probably going to look at doing the torch P that we've used more as a district, put it at an angle like that, and integrate some blue and silver into that design as well. So I'd like to end with learning outcomes per my assignment, but I'd also like to do some introductions since it is our first time to be together in this format and give you some updates about fine arts in general. For those of you who don't know who I am, I've been here for about 5 years, director of bands for Prosper High School from 14 to 19. We had some tremendous success in the last couple years, and I think that's probably why I'm standing here. I think the idea is that we continue this success as we open high school 2, 3, 4, etc., and share a little bit of the secret sauce and the systems that we've learned in band with all of the fine arts. And if you don't know who this is, you haven't been in Prosper long. This is the person holding fine arts together. Fortunately, we had the foresight to put her in place about 3 years ago, and she's about ready for an assistant. One of our first steps was to create a mission statement for fine arts. So I'll allow you to read to the bottom, but I'll read to the audience because it is kind of smaller print. The mission of the Prosper Independent School District Fine Arts Department is to support the mission of the Prosper ISD by providing unparalleled curriculum and instruction, artistic opportunities, and creative endeavors for our students. As we develop, enrich, and inspire the innate artistic talents that reside in every child, we will instill a lifelong passion for the arts in both our students and our community through innovation and excellence. Who are we really? We're 70 teachers. 4% are new to teaching, 35% are new to Prosper ISD, and 13% moved into a new position within Prosper this year. So only 48% of our team holds the same position that they did last year. Of those, some more statistics balances well with what we had from our HR report from last year: 22 male, 48 female, 86 white, 4% Hispanic, 7% African American, and 3% two or more races. As I scan through our art faculty, I see a combination of old and young, black and white, new to the profession, people that are trying new jobs, moving from the classroom into elementary, and we really are a melting pot of what makes Prosper prosper. We've had some wonderful professional learning opportunities together where we've gotten to collaborate and share ideas, best practices. We have some amazing things that I'd like to share with you on how we're making connections. Last spring, I began floating around and visiting with all the fine arts teachers individually, and the consensus was a lot of people felt like an island. If you're an elementary music teacher, elementary art teacher, or a singleton at a middle school, you're the only choir, the only theater teacher, you don't always have people to network with and share ideas with and have a sanity check with. So what we did was we took that island, which is really more like this at times, and we started to find ways to network. So we have online PLCs where people take videos of things that are working and not working, whether it's a song or a discipline issue in the classroom, be it 30-second or a minute-and-a-half video, and just get feedback from the other teachers in the district. We also have some cross-curricular collaborations where we have music and art working together on presentations where we have maybe more than one elementary school putting on a show. That way the kids that were in class together a year ago and they split, they get to come back and put on a production together. We also have just consistent dedication to removing barriers, finding new ways for people to connect vertically and horizontally in their departments. We now have presence on school wires. As of 3 or 4 weeks ago, there was not a fine arts department. There is now. So if you're moving from Ohio or Idaho, you can see the fine art teachers and get links to their webpage. We also developed a Google site for fine arts for resources for the teachers, including our fine arts event calendar, different fine arts overview, our roster, previous professional learning. So it's just a hub for new teachers to get caught up. So all of our new hires, when we did that new teacher hire, we went through all of those documents so they could see what we've been talking about for the last 2 or 3 years, try to get caught up to speed as fast as possible. I told them, I said, you guys are gonna be the vets in about 3 years, so hang on. Also in line with our strategic plan, we have some amazing innovative learning. Like I mentioned before, we have some cross-curricular collaborations. We have, for this year, our first inaugural all-district honor choir, which most of us saw at convocation, which is another great way to keep those kids connected, to pull the choir kids in at an early age and get them to know each other. We also are launching our inaugural all-district orchestra. Suzuki Strings has been a real home run for the district. We have about 200 kids on the waiting list for that program. Art is going for the biggest distinction that they can find. It's about a 2-page rubric, and it's a team effort. K through 12, they're all working on this TAEA District of Distinction award together. And then we have some new offering at PHS this year. So this is an invitation to our first ever all-district orchestra concert where we have Suzuki kids playing alongside middle school and high school kids. They're all trying out for spots in this honor orchestra. That's this Saturday at 3 o'clock in the auditorium. New course we have at the high school, John Burdett called me and he said, when can we start a mariachi group? And I said, we might have 3 kids that can be in it, but let me see what else I can find that might be a place for us to have more kids sign up. This is where we're starting. Not saying we're not going to do mariachi, we will eventually, but this course allows kids that are maybe into athletics or CTE, or they dropped out of fine arts in middle school, a music offering to get their fine arts credit. Right now, if you're at PHS, your only options are to take a theater or an art to satisfy your fine arts elective. So we created history of pop music. I went and I taught with Mr. Coleman today. We did a whole episode on slavery and its roots with blues. It's an amazing class. There's about 35 kids. I foresee that blowing up in the future. For the second consecutive year, Per the work of Ms. Ferguson, we were named the 2019 Best Community for Music Education by the NAM Foundation. So we talk a lot about growth. I want to kind of breeze through some charts here so that we can see the impacts and what the growth looks like in the fine arts world. We added a second elective for sixth graders this year, and that really helped us to keep up with the overall growth in the district because sixth grade is our entry point for our programs. So by opening that second elective, we were able to see some amazing results. So 2018 to 2019, we were about 3,400 kids. Today we're 3,939. That's all kids 6 through 12. So we're averaging about 16% growth, probably a figure you're used to hearing, right? Well, by opening that elective, we had 84% growth in art, 54% in band, 214% growth in choir, 46% in orchestra, 71% in theater. This is, again, just grades 6 through 12, our overall growth. I started tracking data about 4 years ago. I was the band director, but I was just really curious to see what kids were doing. So I started tracking this data, and about 16, 17% growth per year equals about 62% growth over the last 4 years. And you'll see some parallels here. Art has grown at about a 60% rate. Band at 60%. Choir at 65. Again, this is over the last 4 years. Dance at 60%. Orchestra at 153%, largely due to the fact that they started out so small that the numbers worked in their favor on that one. And then theater at 52%. So we're all hovering right around that 60% mark. But I would point out that a large part of that has to do with the fact that we opened up the sixth grade elective this year, so we made up some ground. We were not growing the same rate as the district until this year. Overall fine arts enrollment is as such. This is a picture of the Rogers and Hayes band sitting side by side at the middle school football game. On the left, I have the band directors getting a selfie, and on the right, I have the return of the glorious Mr. Ani from Salina ISD. They even got to play a few songs together. So we're going to continue to find ways for these kids to be together. Social emotional health is obviously a big part of the strategic plan, and nothing serves our community quite like the fine arts because these are large knit communities that pull kids together. And so as we split and as we grow, those communities will stay intact. And this is just a place for all kids to belong, and that's really our goal. We have overall grades 6 to 12, we have 77% participation in fine arts, and my goal is to make that 100%. So our learning outcomes, this is the last chapter of my presentation. It's not just what we do after college. Our learning outcomes are constant, right? So this is a Suzuki recital. They have to go out and give recitals, and they get their different awards and their levels. They're at the Tribute Senior Living, and if you don't know, there are 3 residents at this. So if you're looking for a place, I am looking for a place for my in-laws right now, and see if we can move them in there. And on the side of the building, we have 2 new faces as of this year, Austin Mann in choir and Maddie Weaver on the bassoon, state champions on their respective instruments. Alejandra Maldonado, she was one of our first members, and her mom was instrumental in getting the orchestra program launched because she kept calling and calling and calling. And she's a real success story. She was one of our leaders in the orchestra. She was in the first year in its inception with Mr. Planks, several regional and state awards, silver and gold medals, and member of the regional orchestra. And now she went to TWU, she studied music education, and they just keep giving her scholarships. So she's a magnet. I think everybody at TWU is just loving having her. And in fact, she is teaching private lessons to some Prosper ISD kids, going to their home and teaching them private lessons now. So she's one of our rock stars. Only a couple more for you here. Yuxi Sissy Zhang was ELL. She was Chinese. The art teachers worked with her through Google Translate. And Sissy advanced to state base in her first year.
That's amazing.
Let's just all remember that the fine arts is the glue that connects us all, and we will continue to tell you stories in years to come about all the amazing things. I have so many pictures of kids participating in college, I couldn't even fit them all in. So thank you all for your support, and we'll see you soon when we're coming to ask for more money.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you.
That's very encouraging. Okay, that wraps up the consent agenda. So I need a motion to approve.
I'll make the motion to
All right,
approve.
thank you, Jana. Second? Thank you, Deborah. All in favor? Okay.
Okay, we have a few more waivers, 7 to be exact. To add to our, I believe the number was 32. Pushes us to 39. I recommend that you approve. You can see them on the left.
The biggest is that 25?
4.
You got one here, I thought, yeah.
Well, I'm looking on the left.
Rucker. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. The year to date, it's already been approved.
Yeah.
Is this where you want to make your disclaimer that there's no correlation between,
Well, there isn't. There's a correlation between teacher awesomeness and student performance.
that's what I was looking for.
This number is not as relevant as that is.
That's what I was looking for.
Okay.
Okay,
Make a motion for.
thank you, Mays. Second? There you go. Thank you, Michelle. All in favor?
Presentation with Ms. Gassman. New fun stuff with HB3.
Good evening. I'm just here to update you on some legislative updates regarding HB3 and pre-K. Well, a rule was passed in July that all school districts must require full-day pre-K for 4-year-olds who are qualifiers. Since the decision came down in July, needless to say, there was no time to prepare to accept our students because we did not have teachers ready, classrooms ready, curriculum. Actually, nobody did. So they are giving us a bye for this year without having to do any paperwork. However, moving forward, they are requiring some items. So it requires full day for all eligible 4-year-olds, and this is your qualifiers. It requires that the program be high quality and that the full day program be implemented this year, but like I said, there was absolutely no way that any school district with such late notice be able to implement this program. Now, currently in PISD, we have 5 ECSE classrooms, all used to be known as PPCD, and 3 PK qualifier classrooms, and we have 6 sections of those. One of those sections is actually a one-way dual language program. We've got about 18 students that are native Spanish speakers. Needless to say, that was enough to make a class, and those students are in that class. So this year, if we would have gone ahead and done the full day program, we would have needed an additional 8 classrooms. I did meet with Mr. Bradley to make sure that we didn't have extra 8 classrooms in the district, and he said no. So we moved forward to go ahead with the waiver for future years.
What is ES? What does that
It's
stand for?
early childhood special education. So it used to be preschool program for children with disabilities. They've changed the name now, so that's what it's called. So to allow us to prepare, TEA is offering the ability to ask for a waiver if one of 2 things is the issue why we're not able to do it. We would need to construct new classrooms, or it would result in fewer children being served. And what's meant by that is if we went to full day, we would have a line of kids out the door that we simply would not have room for. You could not put in a waiver for 100 kids in one classroom. And you may think that's an exaggeration. A neighboring district did go full day, and their enrollment tripled in 1 year. Because when you go to full day, you also provide transportation. So 8 classrooms needed is actually not even realistic. We would probably need more like 20 to accommodate all the students, since we would be able to provide after-school care and busing. PISD must demonstrate that we are seeking a public-private partnership. Now, what this means is we must work with area early childhood centers to see if they'd be willing to house our students for a pre-K program. The options for us is we would be able to hire the teacher, they would be able to hire the paraprofessional, and basically our students would be bused to these early childhood centers. The Board of Trustees actually is the one who makes the final decision regarding whether or not this is the route we go. The waiver could last up to 3 years, and this is our first year, so it'll end soon. And then if we are unable to provide full-day pre-K, they'll allow us to apply for another 3-year waiver. However, there are several steps we must take to ensure that we're showing good faith to be able to provide a full-day program.
Ms. Gassman, does this year count as year 1, or does year 1 not count till next year?
No, this is year 1.
Okay.
So we have 2 years left, because this year, for all practical purposes, is just flying by on the 3-year waiver. And then the one caveat they have to show good faith is we must add 1 full-day class every year. So this year is exempt, but for the 2021 school year, we must house 1 full-day program. And I have lost sleep wondering, how do you select the 22 students that get into that class with parents lining up, we'll work through that. The exemption process, we were requesting an exemption for this year. We will offer the one section for next year. And I also want you to know that we have created developed a focus group with the district, with all the stakeholders, because this is really a big deal. This is gonna affect us because we're putting off a waiver for 4 years, and how much have we already grown in 1 year? So it's going to be a very, very large program. We need your permission to be able to post a bulletin on the website asking for the proposal from the local child care centers. We have that ready to go once you all approve that. And we've got it ready to publish in the newspaper as well as on the PISD website. All of this is required by TEA to show good faith that we are trying to have a full-day program. I will be accepting the proposals between September 20th to October 15th. I also will be having an information meeting for local area child care centers on October the 1st with stakeholders involved. The pre-K focus group meeting will look at the proposals on 10/22. That is a public meeting, and that is also required by TEA. So we must post that is a public meeting, and that's where the group will meet and look at each proposal. I have a rubric ready to go so that we can really analyze each proposal to see if it might be an option for PISD to go that route. And then from there, I will forward our notes, our Google Doc, to Ms. Ferguson, who will then present it to you all in November. And then in December is when I would like a decision from the board regarding the proposal, since we start the waiver process in January as far as writing it out. It's not available yet from TEA. It won't be available till January, but all these steps must be completed now in order to have everything in place.
Is that now or December of 2020?
All those 19s,
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, 19. I'm ahead of myself. Yes, it's 19. I apologize.
Okay.
And then, correct, January 2020 is when we begin the exemption process. You guys are looking at my slides, thank you. That was a test. So this is the group on the focus group that will help plan the pre-K program moving forward. As you can see, there are stakeholders from all departments, from central, from transportation. We've got ESL teachers involved, the curriculum department involved, because that's what's part of a high-quality pre-K program. When you go from a half day to a full day, we need to see how is that day going to be broken up curriculum-wise. And then in 2022, 2023, when our waiver is up, we either begin offering a full-day program for all pre-K students who are eligible, or we go ahead and we try to put in for another exemption with TEA. And do you have any questions?
but even if you're getting approved for the exemption, you have to add an
Yes,
additional full day every year?
yes. Every
Okay.
year you must add an additional full-day pre-K program.
So it's sort of like a partial exemption.
Yes, and something else we're discussing, so we're talking about the qualifiers, but then we also have the ECSEs. So there's a lot to work out in a very short amount of time. And every year that we're here, open for business, our population grows larger and larger. So as we meet as a group, we really need to think about 24, 30, 40 classrooms by the time 4 years roll around.
Because there's no mechanism for a district to get permission to maintain half-day pre-K.
No, they say if you don't have space, you can work with an early childhood center, but my personal opinion, I like keeping things within Prosper. I mean, it's a y'all's decision, but,
Didn't we go, wasn't that an early childhood center we saw in Mansfield?
yes.
That was just half day.
We visited that childhood center as well,
It's
because
very impressive.
it's absolutely beautiful. It's very, very expensive.
Right.
They are, yes, they are half-day.
They
You're
were half-day.
absolutely right.
But I guess there won't be any more, huh?
No, they will not.
We really need another one.
And that's a good point. That was very expensive to build. Now they have to cut the number of kids that
They're
they,
gonna have to, yeah, they're gonna have to replicate that.
yeah.
Okay.
Any further questions?
Any other questions? Okay. Well, we'll wait for something to act upon.
So right now, forge ahead with, yeah.
Yes, you give permission for us to post the bulletin?
Yes.
Okay, and that will be done. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Melissa.
Ms. Gassman. Okay, we have updates to EIC local. this is, fun, GPA stuff.
Right. I didn't have any questions coming out of that. Anybody have any questions coming out of that update that we reviewed? Okay. Well, then I say we need a motion to approve those changes. Thank you, Jana. Second? All right, thank you, Kelly. All in favor?
And then we got the Learning AZ license quote. And we're just gonna do 1 year, right, Ms. Ferguson? We had some other year options, but that would require us paying for all that on the front end. We're not gonna do that. We'll just commit to the 1 year because this is sort of, we wanna see, and we wanna evaluate them a little bit better before we commit to that much.
Good.
So the number is 110,741.66.
It's a bus.
It's a bus. That's exactly what that
I'd
is.
love to make that motion.
Okay, well, there you go.
Pro guided reading.
There you go, Jana, coming on strong. All right, thank you, Bill. All in favor? Okay.
Into the business.
Tonight's report represents the end of the year as of August 2019. However, these are rough numbers, draft numbers. They're not audited. In the month of December, you'll be getting the final audit report from our CPA. But tonight, I'm just going to give you a brief view of what the numbers should be like, very close to them. We ended very positive. There was no surprises for the month of August. In our bank account, investment by summary by these 5 different institutions, we ended up in the general fund over $104 million compared to $87 million a year ago. This shows the investments by fund. As you can see, the first one is the general fund. The next one is the debt service. We ended up at 13.9 million in the debt service fund from 10.6. As you know, that the bond fund is a fluctuation numbers going up and down based on the proceeds of the current sales and the uses. We are at a little over $118 million at this time for the next few more months projects. Total investments, as you see, is over $240 million in all of our investment accounts. Revenue, briefly, we had no surprises here as well. Our budget was $126 million. We ended up short of that, 125.4. However, we still are waiting on the final outcome of the state funding. We do know what their numbers are, but they have not finalized that number yet for us to go through, continue through. But that will be over $126 million, I'll assure you. The revenue is approximately almost 20% increase from the prior year as planned. This shows you the comparison of percentage based upon local revenue versus prior year versus the state. As you can see, the local revenue this year is 81.9%. That may be a little less once we get the state funding added for the final. The current tax collections as of 12 months, we ended up almost a little over $138 million. Last year we was 110. Both years total tax collection was over 103% of what the total levy was. And that basically is including the ag rollback exemption, or ag rollback tax collection received, as well as delinquent taxes. This shows you the ag rollback for the year. We received 1.3 million this year. That's the lowest we've had in 2 or 3 years now. Last year was 2.1, and the year prior to that was over $4 million. Expenses, as you can see, our total expenses for the year ended up a little over $120 million. Our budget was almost $126 million, so we were a little less than $5 million short of our budget. It's still 28% higher than last year's total expenses. As you can see in the first column, the biggest change is a $23 million increase in payroll in the first column. The good news is we budgeted $26 million, so that's good news. And just briefly, there's just a small increase, 20% increase in all the others, in the total services and supplies, travel, debt payment. There was an increase in Chapter 41 as you doubled, but there was a decrease in the capital expenditures. This next slide just shows you the total based by payroll compared to prior year. Just like we were running all the last 11 months, we knew that the payroll was higher than it would be prior year, as well as that we knew that the Chapter 41 would be higher. As you can see, our budget was 125.9 as I spoke. We came in at 120, 95.4% of the budget, and that's probably the highest percentage that we've had since I've been here. So you can tell we're getting closer and closer to our target. This shows you the expenditures by functions. As you can see, in all categories, we've increased percentages in most, except for the construction. That's due to capital purchases that we reduced this year. As you can see, instruction continues, leads the way. It was 93% last year. It's almost 98% this year. And a couple other funds that we report, good showing, good positive ending. Net cash flow for the food service fund was $342,000 net of expenses, and last year was $274,000. Debt service continues to grow. Last year we did have a much higher cash flow than we did this year, but we ended up this year at $13.9 million in the bank. As you can see, we met our budget in both revenue as expenses and still made a cash flow.
How do you marry that net cash flow, those numbers, to what our fund balance is? Our fund balance is what in debt service?
Right now, at 13.9 million.
Okay.
So it was about a little over 12 million last
Okay.
year. And it's been about increasing of about $2 to $3 million a year for the last 4 or 5 years. And the last is the athletic fund. As you can see, it's really just the same as it was last year at this time. One last is showing the total payments by month. The last 4 months of the last sale. I don't do it by year. I do it by bond sale. And so we received the funds back in April. So in the last 4 months, as you can see, we're averaging a little over $22 million a month.
Those are a heck of a mortgage payment.
Yeah, it sure is.
Any questions with the financial reports? Again, this is not final, but it's real close. Okay.
Okay, any questions for Rusty?
Thanks, sir.
Great, we move into the first.
Well, I need to go ahead and, Ms. Ballmer's gonna come to you first.
That's all one,
Yeah.
that's all one item.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm very proud to be able to present the first reading for Prosper ISD. However, I am new here. I cannot take any credit for this superior rating. This is due to the planning. These things don't happen in a single year. The planning of this board, superintendent, and Mr. Craig, and the guidance of their advisors, of course. A lot of the things as well that you'll see that they rate you on, well, it takes planning and you can adjust some things are really out of our control, and we're kind of sort of moving along with whatever law or revenue source or even expenditures that are required by the state that we've heard also as well. So We'll jump into this one. The first few indicators are really just some really basic things that are, if you don't meet these, then you're in deep trouble. So these are pass-fail. So question one, did you submit your audit within the timeline? Really, it's not so much of a regulatory thing as did you know how to submit it. But typically, if people aren't able to do their audit by January 28th, then there's a significant problem with it, and so that's why they have that there as well. An unmodified opinion, district received an unmodified opinion on their audit report, which is good, by the way. It sounds like it's bad, but it's a good report. There's no weaknesses in the audit report as well, and no default disclosures. Timely payment to all government agencies. Question number 5 is listed, but they said they're not scoring it, so I put it there to make sure we had all the numbers that we needed to. Number 6 is number of days cash on hand and current assets to current liabilities, so the current ratio. So they're using business type ratios to evaluate us as an ongoing concern for our government. Long-term liabilities to total assets, again, full points for that one. And did our revenues equal or exceed our expenditures? And yes, they do. A lot of times if this isn't quite, is not that case, it's very often a planned reduction of fund balance too. So the district were to do that in the future, it wouldn't be by accident. Number 10, debt service coverage ratio, full points for that. And our administrative cost ratio is very favorable. You get full points if your ratio is less than 8.5%. Prosper ISD is at 4%. That can also be bad. You also have to have enough administrative staff to manage your operations, but definitely from the state, we're doing a fantastic job there. Did we have a 15% decline in student to staff ratio? We got full points for that as well. And our PEMS data, this is absolutely critical, and we got full points for that, just a minuscule different on our PEMS data. The audit report, again, we're completely in compliance, and we did not have any adjusted payment schedules. This here is just other required information for the first report. If there are any questions.
It's a new addition. All right. That is your approval.
Great, thank you. Any questions on that? Wonderful scoring. Thank you for our administration. Great leadership. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll take a motion to consider and approve the tax report, financial tax report, and first presentation. Ricky Mays, second? Second. All right, second Bill, all in favor? Great, thank you.
No amendments?
Okay.
All right, the tax rate to support the budget you approved last month. And you don't get to say this that often, going down.
Going down. Questions, comments on this? All right, entertain a motion to approve the tax rate.
I'll make a motion to approve the tax rate.
Thank you, Deborah. Okay, Jana, all in favor?
This is to extend the existing network agreement.
Same company, right?
Yes, I believe so. Let me see here. Yeah, for the amount not to exceed $180,000 with Nationwide Networks.
Anything more on that, or is that?
Unless y'all have questions, Fernando can
No?
speak to
Packet?
it.
Okay, we'll entertain a motion to
No questions.
approve that option to extend the existing agreement. All right, Jana?
Yeah.
Second? All right, Michelle, thank you. All in favor?
On E, we're gonna call Mr. Witt up.
Mr. Witt.
There he is. All right.
Okay, good evening. It's good to be back. I appreciate the opportunity. I think the first slide is probably one of the reasons we're here tonight. And so you'll see on this graph to the very far right, of course you are looking at it on the screen, but to the far right bottom, you'll see a number there, 2.85% on this particular national index. When you look at the average across the middle, it's 4.31%. We draw bars at the top at 550 and 325 because that represents really our bottom of market and top of market, except for a few occasions. We did have one that broke through the top end in October of 2008 at 6%. That was the precursor to the Wall Street meltdown. And then in July of 2016, we had a run down to record low interest rates, and we're on that same path as we speak. I do believe the index will be up slightly next week. This is a weekly index. But it's a modern history of interest rates going back to January 2001. And so the bottom line is we're at record low interest rates. And so we put together a plan for your consideration to accelerate some of our time frame for the issuance of bonds in order to capture this market. So on the next page, you'll see that we, as you well know, have sold all of the bonds that were approved by the voters in 2007. That was a $710 million bond authorization issued in multiple increments there, culminating in the final one in 2019, which was $200.5 million. That $200.5 million covered a variety of projects, but including at least a starting point for middle school number 4, which is kind of our crossover project between the prior bond election and this one. It's underway as we speak. And so we have the 2019 bond authorization of $1,337,000,000. On the next page, in order to sell and issue bonds when we have a locked-in fixed INS tax rate at 50 cents, it takes additional growth to your taxable value in order to be able to support any new bond issuance. So your historical statistics here, I'm sorry, I'm ahead of everybody else. I'm in charge of flipping my own slides here. So historical stats, the net taxable value in 2014-15 was right at $3 billion. Here in 1920, the taxable value is $9.7 billion. So your 5-year average annual taxable value growth is right at $1.3 billion over that period, but there is some fluctuation. Your lowest growth year was $778 million, and your highest was $1.7 billion last year. This year's growth is slightly below that at $1.5 billion. And so that's the values that we're working with. If you went back to a history of time, you'll see that economies determine tax base and so forth. So when we sell and issue bonds amongst projected growth, we need to make sure that we protect ourselves, that we don't assume a continuation of a growth rate that could stop at no cause of ours or yours or whatever, but we need to be cognizant of those changes that can occur. All indications are is that you're still northward bound and will be at any time in the near future. Your INS fund balance, as Mr. Craig mentioned earlier, I've got the round number of $13 million. That's up from 14-15 when it was $182,000. So your current INS principal and interest is $47.8 million. So as a percentage of your expenditures, you're right at 27%. Unlike your general fund where we target 25% or 3 months of operating, there's no specific target on the INS side. This is money that's available to you to be used for cash flow and in fact take advantage of the market that we have and sell the bonds into this market. We may need to use some of the INS fund balance in order to capture those low long-term interest rates. Again, this is what this money is for, and it's an appropriate use of it for cash flow measurement. On the next slide, so our plan of finance is actually 2 installments. You're approving tonight the first $100 million of that with a sale in October of 2019 and a closing in November of 2019. And then we plan to follow up with $150 million approximately July of 2020. The benefit of July of 2020 is we'll have a certified value in July of 20 that will give us a chance to look back at what we've sold and what we're digesting in terms of bonds issued, and then forecast going into July of 21, which that $150 million will be sold into that projected growth at that time. The types of bonds that are being considered are fixed rate, which are the traditional bonds that you've issued here. We do think as a growing district with this volume of sales and issuance that you need to consider another tool in the toolbox, which is adjustable rate soft put bonds. And so this is a bond that's very flexible. It takes advantage of short-term interest rates, which are traditionally lower than long-term rates. And it's a financing mechanism that we believe is available to you and should be used not only this year, but on a going forward basis. The INS tax rate, again, is at 50 cents. The amortization length is 30.5 years. Texas law allows for up to 40 years, but we tend to stay in the 30-year range for brand new construction for growing districts like yours. Again, the use of INS fund balance is a part of the plan, and the taxable value growth that's needed is approximately $1.5 billion next year for 2021. We had $1.5 billion this year, and then following up that with $1 billion in 21-22 will allow the continuation of the plan of finance, which will absorb the additional $150 million. So $250 million sell and issuance in the next 18 months is what we're looking at. That's shown graphically on the next page. This is the first installment of $100 million, and you can see there that at 11.2 billion at 50 cents, that's approximately 55.5 million of INS tax collections, which will be available to support your existing bonds, which are shown in black, and then the additional 100 million that is shown in light green. So again, there's the $1.2 billion. You see a small red use of the INS fund balance in this fiscal year to take on the small interest payment that you'll have by selling in October of 19 and paying the first interest payment in August of 20.
How big is that red box?
It's about $1 million, and my numbers are typically worst case scenario. So for example, when I'm showing 13 million, you have 13.9 million.
You and Rusty do.
Yeah.
the same way.
So that number is a small amount. The bigger amount is on the next page, and this is the one that we'll talk about again. Oh, there you go. Thank you. On this slide, the next one that we'll be looking at is next year when we take on the additional $150 million. You see in 21, the red at the top, that's about $3 million there. And so again, we hope that's conservative. That's based on just $1 billion of growth in that year. We'll have another crystal ball, another picture of the district and all of the finances to talk about before we issue those bonds. We will seek your approval like we're seeking tonight before we sell and issue the additional $150 million. But you can see there going from 11.2 billion, which is a projected $1.5 billion or a needed $1.5 billion from this year's tax base, we're just showing $1 billion in the next year in order to absorb those two installments. That's not a prediction, it's just a protection, if you will. The likelihood is a continuation of $1.3 billion, $1.5 billion, $1.7 billion of growth. There's no anecdotal picture that would indicate anything other than that. But if something happens between now and then, at least gives us a chance to recalculate,
We have lived through that
reformulate.
once.
Pardon me?
We have lived through that once.
We have lived through that once,
Yeah.
and so we're hoping to not have that big a delay from the time that we sell the first installment to the follow-up installments. So that's how it's designed for you. And then on the last side is just the preliminary schedule of events. Again, we met with the staff on September 5th to kind of talk about the bond program. On September 11th, as Mr. Bridges mentioned earlier, we went through the detail of the slides that you have here with the Finance Subcommittee. And then tonight, we're looking for board action to adopt the orders authorizing the issuance of the bonds. And there's two orders tonight because, again, we are considering and contemplating some of the $100 million being sold with fixed-rate bonds and some being sold with adjustable rate, what we call soft put bonds. And therefore, two orders will control those two components of the $100 million. Around the middle of October, we'll have conference calls with the rating agencies. We'll get the permanent school fund guarantee letter. That's the letter that guarantees us the AAA rating, which is the highest credit quality out in the market, which allows us to have the lowest borrowing cost in the market. And then approximately the week of October 28th to price and lock in the rates. And then the documents go to the Attorney General's office for their review process, and we'll set a closing date a little less than 30 days later. So that's the week of November 18th. So with that, I'll answer any questions that you may have. I recognize that there's left brain and right brain people. The artists and the architects, they get to put up very, very pretty pictures. All I have is slide and data, so I'm the dry, unfunny finance guy. So next time, maybe put me up before then, so you can.
It's good. It's a good recommendation. We did meet, Michelle and Mays and I met on the 11th, went through all of this, so if you have any more questions or comments from you two?
I know one of the questions I had, and Dr. Watkins or Dr. Bradley answered, what does this buy us?
Yeah.
You know, where does this get us through, was kind of the question I had. Because it's easy to look at these big dollar amounts, but at the end of the day, what can we build with this?
Yeah, this was elementary 13, 14, middle school 5, and starts a little bit on high school 3. I believe that's,
Finish 4 too, right? Finish.
finish 4, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Finish 4, elementary 13, 14, middle school 5, and then starting. Not now, it's the 250. I'm
Yeah.
bleeding into.
Yeah, 250.
This is just for the 100 tonight.
Right.
Right.
But I'm talking about the whole
Yeah.
250.
Yeah. Yeah. So all that's, you know, as we sort of joked in the beginning, we gotta marry what we can afford to build, while at the same time, now that the state has done what they've done with funding, what we can staff.
Right.
I still think it's prudent to, as soon as available, to build as quickly as we can and move in when we can, instead of trying to synchronize those things necessarily, because even if you can build and not yet staff, you're still saving millions of dollars in construction
That's
costs
right. We've seen that too.
in doing that with neighboring districts. So it's just the difference with us is we'd be choosing to do that versus
Right.
getting caught doing something like that.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions for Doug or for the subcommittee?
So the recommendation is for fixed and flexible soft put bonds,
2 orders, that's correct.
authorizing the administration to execute all the documents.
Okay, we need a motion for that.
I'll make a motion for that.
All right, Mays, got a motion? Second?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. All in favor? Okay,
And then we have, let's see,
marquees.
yeah, what we're asking for now, that's what gets
Yeah,
someone
there's
excited
excitement.
back there.
Excitement in the crowd.
Yeah. Okay.
For a marquee.
Everybody has different exciting points.
What are we gonna do right? What are we gonna do with all those letters?
Letters.
That's real, we're gonna have a
All
garage
the
sale.
letters.
What we're asking for is a number not to exceed the 450. We need to verify with the vendor that we're dealing with that they have been through the buy board. And so we would be good to go, but, so what we're asking for permission tonight is the not to exceed, so we can get it rolling on all that stuff. And we're looking at, let's see if it's on here. It might jump out. Folsom, Moss, Folsom? Well, we're pricing to see if it would be better to, here's Folsom, to
Yeah.
tear that down
Right.
and just build what we have it might be cheaper to actually do that. So that price would come down.
Got it.
But the total number not to exceed, we're asking for 450.
450,000, okay? Purchase and install electronic marquees.
Just the thought process behind this is the opportunity to
Yeah.
advertise special events, things
Well,
coming
yeah,
up.
it will be more of a usable device on the campuses. Right now, you know, it's, they do it begrudgingly because we bark at them if there's not anything on the marquee, but it's painful and it's not timely. So it would be more current, up-to-date announcements to the parents coming through, of events on the campuses.
Okay.
And for lack of a better term, it was campaign promise during the bond issue. So,
There you go. Okay,
but that was part of it as well.
There you go.
there you go. Okay, we need a motion for that. The signs. All right, thank you, Jana. Second? All right, thank you, Bill. All in favor? Okay. Okay,
Didn't get an amen after that.
didn't get an amen,
Yeah.
yes, a lot of murmuring.
Excitement.
There you go, there you go. I like that. We don't get that very
The
often.
ones who change out the letters.
Yeah.
Really hoot and holler.
Exactly, exactly. Okay, I do need a motion to move into executive session.
I'll make the motion.
All right, Deborah, second. Second from Mays, all in favor? Good, okay. So we're heading into executive session. We make decisions in executive session. It usually takes north of an hour to come out of there, so
Depends.
depends sometimes. You're welcome to stay around if you want to see the results of those decisions. Otherwise, you can look at your board briefs when Drew sends those out. But thank you for being here.